What happens when a billionaire's 3-month-old daughter cries for 18 hours straight, driving away 4 professional nannies, until a humble Guatemalan housekeeper does something that leaves the pharmaceutical mogul in tears? Alexander Blackstone thought his wealth could solve any problem, until his wife died in childbirth, leaving him with baby Isabella, who seemed to scream harder every time he held her. After months of failed attempts with expensive nannies and pediatric experts, he was on the verge of complete breakdown when Maria Santos, his quiet housekeeper of 2 years, appeared at 3 a.m. and did something impossible. She made Isabella stop crying instantly. What happened next would shatter everything Alexander thought he knew about parenting, love, and the unexpected sources of life-changing wisdom. Alexander Blackstone stood in his $50 million Manhattan penthouse at 3 a.m., his hands shaking as he stared at the 4th resignation letter this month, tears streaming down his face as his 3-month-old daughter Isabella's piercing screams echoed through marble halls that had once symbolized his pharmaceutical empire's success. "I can't do this anymore, Mr. Blackstone," the latest nanny had written before abandoning them in the middle of the night. "Isabella cries for 18 hours straight, and nothing I learned in my pediatric nursing program helps. There's something deeply wrong here that goes beyond normal infant care." His wife Victoria had died giving birth to Isabella, and since that nightmarish day, every moment of his existence had become a living hell where his baby daughter seemed to reject his very presence, crying harder whenever he tried to hold her, as if she could sense the guilt and despair that consumed his soul. "Please God, just let her sleep for 1 hour," Alexander whispered desperately to the empty room. His $5,000 Armani suit wrinkled from another sleepless night of failed attempts to comfort the child who appeared to hate him. The irony wasn't lost on him that he could command global pharmaceutical markets worth billions, yet he couldn't calm his own 3-month-old daughter, who seemed determined to drive him to complete madness with her relentless screaming. "Isabella, please, baby, Papa is trying," he pleaded as she screamed even louder in his arms, her tiny face red from crying, her minuscule fists clenched as if fighting against the world itself. The sound of her cries pierced his soul like blades, constantly reminding him that he had failed not only as a husband by being unable to save Victoria, but now as a father by failing to provide even the most basic comfort to his daughter. "I should have died instead of your mother," he whispered in desperation, words he would never dare speak aloud during the day, but which haunted him every night when he faced Isabella's incessant screams alone. The sound of soft footsteps in the hallway made Alexander freeze, expecting to see another nanny fleeing her responsibilities, but instead, a gentle voice with a Spanish accent cut through the night's chaos like a ray of light through darkness. "Senor Blackstone, may I help?" Maria Santos, his 52-year-old Guatemalan housekeeper, appeared in Isabella's doorway, her warm eyes full of genuine compassion instead of the cold judgment he had seen in the faces of so many professional nannies. "Maria, you should be sleeping," Alexander responded with a hoarse voice, his shame at being seen in such a state of desperation almost overwhelming his gratitude for any offer of help. "I know this isn't your job, and I can't pay more than I already pay for." His words trailed off as Maria approached calmly, her movements so natural and confident they seemed to come from decades of experience with crying children. "Senor, a crying child knows no work schedules or job descriptions," Maria said softly, extending her arms with a confidence that made Alexander hesitate for only a moment before handing Isabella to her, expecting the screams to intensify as always happened when he passed her to someone else. Instead, something miraculous occurred. Isabella began to calm almost immediately, her screams diminishing to sobs and then to soft sighs as Maria held her with a naturalness that Alexander had never seen in any of the expensive professional nannies. "How?" Alexander whispered in total amazement, watching his daughter relax for the first time in weeks, her tiny fists opening as she settled against Maria's chest as if she had finally found what she was searching for. "How did you do that? For certified nannies couldn't accomplish what you just did in 30 seconds. Maria smiled with the wisdom of someone who had seen this type of desperation before, her eyes moving between Alexander and Isabella with an understanding that seemed to come from deeply personal experience rather than professional training. "Sometimes, senor, babies don't need expensive techniques or equipment," she said in her gentle voice, rocking Isabella in a natural rhythm that seemed instinctive rather than learned. "They need to feel safe, loved, that the person holding them believes they are precious and not a problem to be solved." Maria's words hit Alexander like a punch to the stomach, forcing him to confront the truth that he had been treating Isabella like a business problem to be solved instead of a daughter to be loved. She can feel your pain, Senor, Maria continued, her voice carrying wisdom that transcended any formal education he had ever encountered. Babies are very wise about feelings, even when they cannot speak about them. Isabella knows her mama is gone, and she feels your sadness mixed with love, and this confuses her because she cannot understand why love comes with so much pain. Alexander felt fresh tears burning his eyes as he processed this perspective that none of the expensive pediatricians had offered. The idea that Isabella was responding to his own emotional anguish instead of simply being a difficult child. "Are you saying she cries because of me?" he asked, his voice cracking under the weight of guilt he had carried since Victoria's death. "Not because of you, Senor," Maria corrected gently, "but because she feels your pain and doesn't know how to help you heal, so she cries hoping someone will come and heal both of you." The revelation that Isabella might be responding to his own emotional turmoil instead of simply rejecting him forced Alexander to confront uncomfortable truths about how his grief had created a barrier between him and his daughter when she needed connection most. "I thought if I hired the best nannies and provided everything she needed, that would be enough," Alexander admitted, watching how Isabella slept peacefully in Maria's arms for the first time in months. "I didn't know how. I can't even look at her without seeing Victoria, and the pain is so intense I thought it would be better to leave her care to professionals." Maria nodded with understanding, her eyes filling with compassion for a man whose wealth couldn't protect him from the most fundamental pain of human loss. "Money cannot buy the feeling of being wanted and cherished, Senor," Maria said softly. "And Isabella needs to know that her papa loves her not just with his wallet, but with his heart that is still healing from losing her mama." The depth of Maria's understanding about child development and family dynamics began to emerge as Alexander realized her insights were based on extensive experience raising children in circumstances far more challenging than his own, despite his wealth and resources. "Maria, how did you manage to raise 7 children after your husband died?" Alexander asked during one of their evening conversations while Isabella slept peacefully in her crib, his question reflecting genuine curiosity about how someone with limited financial resources had successfully navigated single parenthood while he struggled despite every advantage money could provide. "It was not easy, Senor," Maria replied with the honesty of someone who had lived through real hardship. "There were many nights when I cried myself to sleep worrying about how to pay for food and rent while still being the mama my children needed." Her acknowledgement of single parenting's practical difficulties provided perspective that helped Alexander understand his challenges, while real, were different from but not necessarily more difficult than those faced by people without his financial advantages. "But I learned that children are very forgiving of mistakes when they know they are loved," Maria continued. "And they are very wise about what truly matters, even when they cannot speak about it." Her observation about children's emotional intelligence challenged Alexander's assumption that providing material comfort was sufficient for Isabella's healthy development, suggesting that emotional presence and authentic connection were more important than expensive toys, clothes, or educational equipment. "In my family, we never left babies to cry alone," Maria explained as she taught Alexander techniques for reading Isabella's different types of cries and responding appropriately to each one, because we believe that responding quickly teaches children that the world is a safe place where their needs will be met with love and attention. Her description of responsive parenting contrasted sharply with some advice Alexander had received from pediatricians and parenting experts who emphasized schedules, independence training, and avoiding spoiling children through too much attention. "We also believe that babies should be part of family life from the beginning," Maria continued. "Not hidden away in separate rooms but included in conversations, meals, and daily activities so they learn from birth that they belong and are valued members of the familia." Her philosophy about infant inclusion challenged the modern American approach of creating specialized baby environments and hiring professional caregivers, suggesting Isabella might benefit more from being integrated into Alexander's daily life than being cared for by expensive nannies in isolation. "See how she arches her back and turns her head when she's overstimulated?" Maria pointed out during one of Isabella's fussy periods. "That means she needs quiet time with dim lights and gentle sounds, not more toys or bouncing or trying to entertain her." The cultural wisdom Maria shared with Alexander drew from generations of family traditions about child-rearing that emphasized community support, emotional expression, and integration of children into adult life rather than segregating them into specialized child-centered environments. "Notice how she makes little sounds before she starts crying?" Maria continued, "Those are her ways of asking for attention or comfort before she becomes truly distressed. If you respond to those early signals, you can often prevent the crying altogether. The insight that Isabella was communicating her needs before reaching crisis points transformed Alexander's approach from reactive damage control to proactive attentiveness that anticipated and met her needs before they became overwhelming. "Watch her eyes," Maria added. "She is studying your face and learning to trust you. When you smile at her and speak softly, you are teaching her that she is safe and loved and that the world is a good place for her to grow and explore." The practical demonstrations of Maria's childcare expertise proved more effective than any professional training Alexander had received, as she taught him to read Isabella's cues, understand her rhythms, and respond to her needs with confidence rather than anxiety. "First, Senor, you must breathe and find peace in your own heart," Maria instructed as she guided Alexander through his first successful attempt to calm Isabella during one of her crying episodes. "Because if your spirit is agitated, La Pequeña will feel that energy and become agitated too." Her coaching approach treated fatherhood as a skill that could be learned through practice and patience rather than an innate ability that some people possessed and others lacked. "Hold her close to your chest so she can hear your heartbeat," Maria continued, demonstrating the technique that had worked so effectively when Alexander found her in the nursery, "and speak to her in the voice you would use to tell someone you love them more than life itself, because that is what she needs to hear even if she cannot understand the words." The instructions challenged Alexander to access emotional capacities that his business training had taught him to suppress, requiring vulnerability and authenticity that felt foreign after years of maintaining professional distance in all his relationships. "Tell her about her mama," Maria suggested gently. "Tell her how beautiful Victoria was, how much you both wanted her, how proud her mama would be to see her growing strong and healthy. Isabella needs to know the story of where she came from and how much love created her existence." The emotional healing that occurred as Alexander learned to care for Isabella also transformed his approach to grief, as Maria helped him understand that Victoria's death could be honored through celebrating their daughter's life rather than being trapped in sorrow that prevented him from being present for Isabella's daily development. "Senor Alexander, may I show you something?" Maria asked one evening as she pulled out a worn photo album filled with pictures of her own children at various ages. "This is how I kept my husband's memory alive for my children after he died." The album revealed a family tradition of storytelling that kept deceased loved ones present in daily life through shared memories, photographs, and ongoing conversations about how proud the departed would be of current achievements and milestones. "We talked about Papa every day," Maria explained, "not in sad ways that made the children cry, but in happy ways that helped them understand how much he loved them and how his love was still part of their lives even though he couldn't be there in person." Her approach to processing grief while maintaining parental functionality provided Alexander with a model for honoring Victoria's memory while remaining emotionally available for Isabella's needs. "Isabella should know her mama through your stories," Maria continued. "And she should see pictures of Victoria holding her when she was born, and she should understand that her mama's love lives on through your love for her." The suggestion that grief could coexist with joy and that memory could enhance rather than diminish present relationships offered Alexander a path forward that honored both his loss and his responsibilities as Isabella's father. "When you tell stories about Victoria to Isabella," Maria explained, "you are not just honoring your wife, you are giving your daughter a sense of where she came from and why she is so precious, because she is the product of the greatest love you and Victoria ever shared." The transformation from viewing grief as an obstacle to parenting into understanding it as a bridge that could connect him with Isabella's need to know her origins marked a crucial turning point in Alexander's emotional recovery and his ability to be the father Isabella needed. "Your grief shows Isabella how much her mama was loved," Maria observed. "And when she is older, she will understand that the depth of your sadness reflects the depth of your love, and that will help her feel proud of where she came from instead of sad about what she lost." The breakthrough moment came 3 weeks later when Alexander arrived home from a particularly stressful day to find Isabella crying in her crib, and instead of calling for Maria or feeling the familiar wave of helpless frustration, he found himself automatically moving into the calming routine that Maria had taught him. "Hey there, my beautiful girl," Alexander said softly as he lifted Isabella against his chest, his voice carrying warmth and tenderness that had been locked away since Victoria's death. "Papa's here now, and I'm going to tell you about the amazing woman who gave you life." The words flowed naturally as he began describing Victoria's laugh, her excitement during pregnancy, her dreams for their daughter's future, allowing his own grief to transform from a barrier into a bridge that connected him with Isabella's need to understand her origins. For the first time since her birth, Isabella stopped crying almost immediately when Alexander held her, her tiny body relaxing against his chest as if she finally recognized that her father was emotionally present rather than just physically available. Maria was right, Alexander whispered to his daughter as she drifted peacefully to sleep in his arms. You weren't just crying because you were hungry or tired. You were crying because you needed to feel loved by someone who wasn't afraid to love you completely. The realization that his emotional availability was the missing ingredient in their relationship marked the beginning of a bond that would reshape both their lives in ways Alexander had never imagined possible. Your mama would be so proud of how strong and beautiful you are, Alexander continued, his voice steady as he spoke words that would have brought him to tears just weeks earlier. And she would be proud of me for learning how to be the father you deserve, even though it took me too long to understand what you really needed. The peaceful expression on Isabella's face as she slept in his arms provided confirmation that the connection he had been seeking was finally being established through emotional presence rather than expensive interventions or professional assistance. Tomorrow I'm going to show you more pictures of Mama, Alexander promised, and I'm going to tell you about the day you were born and how happy we were to meet you, even though it was the saddest day of my life too. The ability to hold both joy and sorrow simultaneously without being overwhelmed by either represented a level of emotional maturity that Alexander had never achieved before becoming Isabella's father. The gradual transformation of their household from a place of grief and dysfunction to one of healing and connection became apparent as Alexander began to understand that Maria's wisdom extended far beyond childcare to encompass life lessons about resilience, family, and finding joy despite loss. Señor Alexander, Maria said one evening as they sat together watching Isabella play with her toys, may I tell you something that might help your corazón heal along with La Pequeña's? Her gentle request for permission to offer personal guidance reflected respect for boundaries while acknowledging the deeper relationship that had developed between them through their shared commitment to Isabella's well-being. My first husband died when my youngest was only 2 months old, Maria continued, and I thought my world had ended, that I could never be a good mama to my children without their papa to help me. The revelation of her own experience with single parenthood following loss provided context for understanding the source of her wisdom about balancing grief with the necessity of being emotionally present for children who needed stability and love. But my suegra, she told me something I never forgot. Mija, your children don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. They need you to show them that love is stronger than sadness, that life continues even when part of your heart is missing. Her mother-in-law's advice carried across cultural and economic boundaries to speak directly to Alexander's struggle with balancing his own grief against Isabella's developmental needs for a father who could provide emotional security and guidance. The wisdom that had helped Maria survive and thrive as a single mother was now being passed to Alexander, creating a bridge between their different worlds through shared experience of loss and parental responsibility. Isabella does not need a perfect papa, Maria continued. She needs a papa who is healing and learning and showing her that even when life breaks your heart, you can put the pieces back together with love. Her perspective reframed Alexander's perceived inadequacies as opportunities for growth and connection, suggesting that his vulnerability and learning process were actually gifts he could give Isabella rather than weaknesses he needed to hide. You are teaching her that men can be gentle and emotional and still be strong, Maria observed. And that is a very important lesson for a little girl to learn from her papa. The recognition that his emotional journey was modeling healthy masculinity for Isabella provided additional motivation for Alexander to continue the difficult work of healing while parenting. The expansion of Maria's role from housekeeper to trusted advisor and surrogate grandmother figure happened naturally as Alexander began to recognize that her wisdom about family life exceeded anything he could learn from books, experts, or his own limited experience with healthy relationships. Maria, would you be willing to help me with more than just the cleaning? Alexander asked tentatively, unsure how to propose a change in their professional relationship that would acknowledge her value as a childcare expert and family counselor. I know it's not what you were hired for, but Isabella responds to you in ways she doesn't respond to anyone else, and I think I need to learn from you about how to be a better father. His request reflected recognition that her expertise was worth far more than what he was paying for housekeeping services, and that Isabella's well-being might depend on maintaining Maria's involvement in their lives in a more substantial capacity. Señor Alexander, it would be my honor to help you and La Pequeña, Maria replied with the dignity of someone who understood the value of what she had to offer, but I think you are already becoming a much better papa than you know. You just needed to learn that love is not something you can buy or hire. It is something you must give with your own hands and your own heart. Her willingness to expand her role while maintaining appropriate boundaries demonstrated wisdom about professional relationships that honored both her expertise and Alexander's position as Isabella's father and ultimate decision-maker about her care and upbringing. What I can teach is based on experience, not books, Maria continued. But the most important thing I can teach you is already in your heart. You just need to let Isabella teach you how to access it. Her words reflected understanding that successful parenting required not just techniques and knowledge, but also emotional vulnerability and willingness to learn from the child about what she needed to feel safe and loved. Isabella is a very good teacher, Señor. She will show you exactly how to be the papa she needs, if you are willing to listen with your heart instead of just your mind. The partnership they were creating represented a new model for family support that honored traditional wisdom while adapting to contemporary circumstances, providing Isabella with the comprehensive care she needed while giving Alexander the guidance required to develop his parenting skills and emotional capacity. The transformation of their household arrangement created an unconventional but highly effective family structure where Maria's wisdom and experience complemented Alexander's resources and commitment, providing Isabella with comprehensive care and attention that neither expensive nannies nor well-meaning but inexperienced fathers could provide alone. This is better than any nanny agency could have arranged, Alexander reflected as he watched Maria teach Isabella to clap her hands while he managed business calls from home, because you're not just caring for her, you're teaching both of us how to be a family. The observation highlighted how Maria's involvement had created stability and continuity that professional caregivers, no matter how qualified, couldn't match because their employment was temporary and their emotional investment was limited by professional boundaries. Isabella knows she can count on both of us, Alexander continued. And I know I can count on your guidance when I'm not sure how to handle new challenges as she grows and develops. The partnership they had created represented a new model for single parenting that acknowledged the value of experienced guidance while maintaining the father-daughter bond that Isabella needed for healthy emotional development. Señor Alexander, Maria said with the satisfaction of someone whose life's work was finally being recognized and valued. I have learned from you too. You have shown me that good papas come in many different forms, and that love can grow even in hearts that have been broken by loss. Isabella is very lucky to have a father who cares enough to learn and change for her sake. The family structure they had developed challenged social conventions about employer-employee relationships while creating exactly the kind of stable, loving environment that Isabella needed to thrive despite losing her mother. We are not a traditional family, Alexander observed. But we are a real family, and that is what matters for Isabella. The definition of family that emerged from their circumstances emphasized love, commitment, and mutual care over legal or biological structures, creating a home where Isabella could grow knowing she was loved and valued by adults who had chosen to prioritize her above social conventions or professional expectations. The business implications of Alexander's new approach to balancing fatherhood with professional responsibilities began to reshape his understanding of leadership and priorities in ways that ultimately strengthened rather than weakened his effectiveness as a CEO. I need to restructure my schedule to ensure I'm home for Isabella's bedtime routine, Alexander announced to his executive assistant. And I want to arrange for some meetings to be conducted from home so I can maintain my presence in her daily life while still managing company business. His willingness to adapt his professional obligations to accommodate his parental responsibilities reflected maturation in his understanding of what constituted true success and sustainable leadership. The pharmaceutical industry will be there tomorrow, Alexander explained to his board of directors during a meeting where he outlined his new approach to work-life integration. But Isabella's childhood happens only once, and I refused to miss it because I was too busy building wealth to enjoy what wealth is supposed to provide: the freedom to prioritize what really matters. His philosophical shift from wealth accumulation to wealth utilization for family purposes created ripple effects throughout his organization as other executives began to question their own assumptions about the relationship between professional achievement and personal fulfillment. Maria taught me that true leadership means being present for the people who depend on you, Alexander said during a speech to young executives. And if I cannot be present for my own daughter, how can I expect to lead effectively thousands of employees who also have families and personal lives that deserve respect and consideration? The leadership philosophy that emerged from his experience with Maria and Isabella influenced corporate policies throughout his company, including enhanced parental leave benefits, flexible work arrangements, and family support services that recognized employees as whole human beings rather than just professional resources. Isabella has made me a better CEO, Alexander reflected, because she taught me that success without connection is meaningless, and that the most important work we do is often the work that happens at home with the people we love. The integration of family values into his business approach created a more sustainable and humane corporate culture that attracted top talent while improving employee satisfaction and retention. The formal recognition of Maria's expertise began when Alexander arranged for her to be certified as a family support specialist through a program at Columbia University School of Social Work, providing her with credentials that reflected her years of practical experience while opening doors for her to help other families professionally. "Maria, I know you didn't need a degree to teach me how to be a father," Alexander said as he presented her with the certification documents. "But I want other people to recognize what I've learned about your knowledge and abilities." The gesture represented both respect for her existing expertise and acknowledgement that formal credentials would enhance her ability to share her wisdom with families who might be skeptical of guidance from someone without traditional professional training. "This will allow you to work with families as a consultant rather than just a domestic employee," Alexander continued. "And it will ensure that you're compensated appropriately for the level of expertise you've demonstrated in helping Isabella and me become a real family." The career advancement opportunity reflected Alexander's understanding that Maria's contributions deserved recognition and compensation that matched their value rather than being limited by conventional expectations about domestic service roles. "Senor Alexander, you have given me more than a job," Maria replied with dignity and gratitude. "You have given me the chance to use my life experience to help other families, and that is a gift that honors all the children I have raised and all the lessons I have learned about what really matters in life." The professional development opportunity also created a pathway for Maria to share her wisdom with other families facing similar challenges, extending the impact of her knowledge beyond Alexander and Isabella to benefit the broader community. "There are many families who need what you taught us," Alexander observed, "and now you have the credentials and platform to reach them." The establishment of Maria as a professional family consultant represented a bridge between traditional cultural wisdom and contemporary family support services, creating new models for helping families navigate challenges through experienced guidance rather than just theoretical knowledge. The ripple effects of Maria's influence began to extend beyond individual families to encompass broader conversations about child development, family support, and the value of traditional knowledge in addressing contemporary parenting challenges. "Maria's approach challenges a lot of assumptions in the field," noted Dr. Sarah Chen, a child development specialist who began collaborating with Maria on research about the effectiveness of culturally informed parenting practices. Particularly the idea that expensive interventions and professional expertise are always superior to experienced caregivers who understand children's emotional needs intuitively. The academic recognition of Maria's methods provided validation for traditional approaches to child rearing that had been marginalized by modern emphasis on credentialed experts and technology-based solutions. "What's remarkable about Maria's success with Alexander and Isabella," Dr. Chen continued, "is how she was able to heal both the father's grief and the child's need for attachment simultaneously, creating a secure family bond that serves as the foundation for Isabella's healthy development." The professional analysis of Maria's intervention highlighted aspects of her approach that could be studied and potentially replicated to help other families facing similar challenges. The integration of grief counseling, parenting education, and practical childcare support in one relationship represents a holistic model that addresses multiple needs more effectively than specialized services that operate in isolation from each other, Dr. Chen observed, providing academic framework for understanding why Maria's comprehensive approach had succeeded where other interventions had failed. The research collaboration between Maria and academic institutions created new models for validating and sharing traditional knowledge within professional contexts, bridging the gap between formal education and lived experience. Maria's work demonstrates that expertise comes in many forms, Dr. Chen concluded, and that the most effective family support often combines professional knowledge with cultural wisdom and personal experience in ways that honor both scientific understanding and traditional practices. The academic validation of Maria's approach opened doors for other experienced caregivers to have their knowledge recognized and utilized within professional family support systems. The establishment of the Alexander and Victoria Blackstone Foundation for Family Support created a permanent platform for sharing Maria's wisdom with families throughout the country who were struggling with similar challenges related to grief, loss, and single parenting. I want to establish a foundation focused on supporting single parents, Alexander announced during an executive meeting, particularly those who are raising children while dealing with grief, loss, or other life challenges that make parenting more difficult. His proposal drew directly from his own experience of nearly failing as a father before Maria's intervention helped him understand what Isabella really needed from him. We'll provide not just financial assistance, but access to experienced caregivers who can teach parenting skills and provide emotional support during transition periods, Alexander continued. Because I've learned that good intentions aren't enough if you don't have the knowledge and confidence to translate them into effective care. The foundation concept reflected his recognition that many parents might benefit from the kind of wisdom and guidance that Maria had provided, but that such resources were often unavailable to people without his financial means to employ experienced caregivers in their homes. Maria will serve as our Director of Family Support Services, Alexander added, because her expertise and compassion have proven more valuable than any degree or certification when it comes to understanding what families really need to thrive. The offer represented not just professional recognition of Maria's contributions, but also acknowledgement that her wisdom deserved a platform where it could benefit other families facing similar challenges. The foundation will train other caregivers in Maria's approach, Alexander explained, creating a network of family support specialists who can provide the kind of comprehensive assistance that addresses both practical and emotional needs. The initiative represented a new model for family support that honored traditional knowledge while creating systematic ways to share that knowledge with families who needed guidance during difficult transitions. The long-term impact of Maria's influence on Alexander and Isabella's relationship became apparent as Isabella grew from an infant into a toddler whose secure attachment to her father and confidence in social situations reflected the emotional stability that Maria's guidance had helped create during her earliest months. Isabella's development is remarkable, noted her pediatrician during a routine checkup. She demonstrates secure attachment behaviors, advanced social skills, and emotional regulation that suggests she's had consistent, responsive caregiving despite the loss of her mother. The professional assessment confirmed that the bond Alexander had learned to build with Isabella through Maria's teaching was producing exactly the kind of healthy development that attachment theory predicted would result from secure parent-child relationships. She's also bilingual, the pediatrician added with surprise, which is unusual for a child her age unless she's been exposed to both languages consistently from birth. The observation reflected Maria's cultural contributions to Isabella's education, as she had naturally spoken to the child in both English and Spanish while teaching Alexander to appreciate the cognitive benefits of multilingual development. Isabella calls Maria abuela, Alexander explained with pride, and she's learned that families can include people who aren't related by blood but who are connected by love and choice. The terminology Isabella used reflected her understanding of Maria's role in their family as more than an employee but as a beloved elder whose wisdom and care had shaped her earliest experiences and would continue to influence her development as she grew into childhood and beyond. What's most impressive, the pediatrician continued, is how well-adjusted Isabella appears despite the trauma of losing her mother so young. That level of resilience usually indicates very secure early attachment and consistent emotional support. The professional validation of Isabella's development provided concrete evidence that Maria's approach to healing both father and daughter had created the foundation for lifelong emotional health and security. She talks about her mama with joy instead of sadness, Alexander noted, because Maria taught us that love doesn't end with death, and that memories can be sources of strength rather than just grief. The transformation that had begun with Maria's simple act of comforting a crying baby had evolved into a comprehensive reimagining of how families could be created, supported, and sustained through the integration of diverse forms of knowledge, experience, and cultural wisdom. Sometimes I think about what would have happened to Isabella and me if Maria hadn't been here that night, Alexander reflected during an interview about his foundation's work with single parents, and I realized that we were saved not by money or professional expertise, but by the willingness of someone to see our need and respond with love and knowledge gained through her own life experience. His recognition of how close he had come to failing as a father highlighted the fragility of family bonds and the importance of having access to support systems that could provide guidance during critical periods of adjustment and growth. Maria taught me that being a father means being willing to learn from anyone who has wisdom to share, Alexander continued, regardless of their background, education, or social status. The most valuable lessons about raising children often come from people who have actually raised children successfully, not from textbooks or expert theories. The philosophy that had emerged from his experience with Maria now guided his foundation's approach to supporting other families, emphasizing practical wisdom and emotional support over technical interventions and expensive programs. The little girl who had once cried inconsolably in her father's arms now played happily in the foundation's family center, her secure attachment and joyful personality serving as living testament to the transformative power of love, wisdom, and the courage to accept help from unexpected sources. Isabella knows she is loved by many people, Alexander observed, but she also knows that her papa learned how to love her properly by listening to Abuela Maria, and that makes her proud of our family and confident in her place in the world. The success story that had begun with a desperate billionaire and his crying baby had become a model for how families could heal, grow, and thrive when supported by the right combination of resources, wisdom, and unconditional love.